Heavy and simple. And hell, after 25, 30 years, we're still talking about Cthulhu.
So, Dan, this is episode 1 of Discography Discussion.
Yeah, sure is.
Can you tell us what band we're doing?
Metallica.
Really?
Who are they?
We're going to start with Metallica?
Yeah, Metal Liquor, I think is what it is. Metal Liquor,
Metallica?
right? Metal Liquor, right. Okay.
So,
I read that right. Okay.
What's the goal of this? What exactly are we setting out to do?
Well, we're just three dudes that talk about metal. Specifically, we try to categorize it by band. That's not to say that certain discussions don't bleed into others, but it's a thing that we're doing. So we're going to talk about the band's discussion.
Introduce yourself.
Oh, me?
Introduce yourself.
Oh, yeah, I'm a Frankfurter.
Oh, can I be Riff Raff?
If you want. Actually, my name's Dan.
And I'm Joe.
Josh.
All right.
And Josh.
And if anybody cares, we're listening to the new album, Hardwired to Self-Destruct, while we have this discussion.
Yeah, we are. You just can't hear it because, Metallica, lawyers, internet, that sort of thing.
That pesky thing. Lars will show up here any minute now.
Right. Which would, we would love that. He'd be really upset, though.
It would be cool for about 6 minutes.
We would definitely have to,
Oh, we are definitely not doing this Napster thing again.
Right, for sure.
Yeah, I don't care about the downloads, guys.
I thought I would just wake up one morning and become the most hated man in rock music.
How much money would you have to pay Lars Ulrich to play the new album while we talk?
I don't know. If he listens to this podcast, then he can contact me if he wants.
Give him your email address. Hit
no,
me up, Lars.
Not on a live podcast. But if Lars wants to get a hold of me, there's ways. Right?
His peeps, call our peeps.
Right.
Get it done.
So right off the bat, I'm going to start with Josh. Favorite Metallica album?
Ride the Lightning for me.
Dan?
Justice for All.
Master of Puppets.
Nice.
Well, this will be well represented.
I hope so.
All right, next question. Was Death Magnetic a good album?
It depends on how you want to look at it. As a studio album, it was okay. I prefer to listen to that album live, like me and Dan have discussed in the past. It's too light. It's not very heavy. Some of the songs are too, I don't want to say simplistic. They're just kind of like drug on and on and on. You could cut some of the riffs that you would just cut, slow this down 2 or 3 minutes.
Songs are way too long.
Definitely a lengthy album.
Well, you were actually the one who told me that you thought Hardwire was a return to heavy. And
yeah,
and I'm the one that says that Hardwired and Death Magnetic, the only difference between the two is how the drums are mixed.
I think what I said, Joe, was that it was the return to aggressive. I didn't find Death Magnetic to be very aggressive.
But would it have been aggressive if the drums had been mixed not by Rick Rubin?
No, because who records your album has nothing to do with how aggressive you are.
That is true.
You really don't think that it's not as heavy, or that Death Magnetic was the same? I feel like this is just a heavier down tune. I mean, everything in Death Magnetic was done pretty much in standard. It's just, there's just so light. I don't know, it's just not a ballsy, beefy sound.
It's that Rick Rubin lack of
it's too
thickness.
Clean cut, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't have a lot of bad to say about Magnetic. It's just that the songs went on for too long. I thought that the recording quality was somewhat flat, like maybe the balls had been taken out of it.
Well, I think, like Joe said, that's a Rick Rubin thing for sure on that. I mean, that's his influence.
That's that American recordings, like early 90s, late 80s, like.
Which is surprising because he's done
analog hip hop sound is the word I'm going for.
Yeah, but this is Metallica, okay? I mean, they don't have any say as to how their record sounds.
Yeah, but obviously they went along with it.
Anger.
Did Johnny Cash get to decide how the American recording sounded? Or did Rick Rubin decide?
Yeah, but that sounded great.
Didn't they?
Yeah.
So why didn't Death Magnetic sound equally as awesome?
Because it wasn't Johnny Cash. We're talking two totally different types of sound here.
That is true.
They talked him into it. Talked him into going lighter. Talked him into going not as heavy.
Yeah, I guess so.
No, I mean, it's the truth. Yeah. James has said in interviews numerous times and how when they approached that album, that Rick Rubin had pretty much had told them, like, you guys don't have to have it, sound so heavy all the time. You guys can just keep it simple, playing a standard tune, and that's what they went with, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you look at the down-tuned, garbage can sound of Saint Anger, and I think Death Magnetic was really more of an attempt to be like, hey, look, that was just a one-off. We're not going to go in that direction again. We're really sorry that you guys didn't like the way that record sounded. But it was just
I don't
us
think
trying
Saint
to be
Anger is
heavy.
a bad album. I think it was the studio. Again, it sounds bad in the studio, but I think Saint Anger, when you listen to the tracks live, I think they're actually pretty kick-ass tunes on that album.
Some of them are.
Which is why you got to ask the question: why isn't it conveyed the same way on the album? Because I listened to Saint Anger and I watched that documentary, and I'll get into the documentary later about. Metallica has been filming themselves from day one, so it's not like they decided to make that documentary. But
Fair enough.
Saint Anger, I get the impression it was mixed badly on purpose.
Well, yeah, I mean, they, according to Bob Rock and the documentary, they say that we wanted it to sound like a band that got together for the very first time in a garage. And that band is Metallica.
Yeah.
But the problem is we've already had that record for decades. It's called Kill 'Em All. So
It's called Garage Inc.
Right. So I mean, I don't know what was so wrong with Kill 'Em All that they felt like they needed to try to do it again.
So doesn't that mean that Saint Anger is more of a what it would sound like if a band was jamming in the garage and they were being mixed by Bob Rock?
Okay, so full disclosure, you know what Saint Anger sounds like to me? It sounds like a whole bunch of middle-aged dudes in a garage trying to sound like they were 17.
Trying to recapture their youth
And
not progressing and moving forward.
Unfortunately, it just wasn't what we wanted as fans. And
you're right.
yeah, it sucks in that regard, in that you want to have a certain amount of respect for a band that you like, but you listen to Saint Anger and when I first got Saint Anger, I remember because me and Josh bought it the same day, and we listened to it, and I think I went over to Joe's house and listened to it. We listened to it on his entertainment center, and we were all about it. For about 4 days. This is because
it's new Metallica.
So it has to be good, right? If it's not good, we just don't get it.
Yeah.
That's what it's got to be. And here I am, several years later, and I really am not entirely sure what the thought process was. I mean, I know that they tried to explain it with some kind of monster DVD, but
I don't think you'll ever get a full explanation. It's just the lyrics are weird, and I don't know if it's just because James coming out of rehab, it was new. He was in a fragile state of mind. It's not the Hetfield we all know.
Right.
The whole idea with Lars' snare drum, I don't get that. I never will understand that. I guess it's what we're chalk it up to. They tried something different, and it failed. It wasn't anything that great.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. It definitely wasn't making any top 10 lists.
No. At least not good lists.
But I mean, I would say that probably the best angle for this discussion would be we got to start at the beginning. We got to give some kind of perspective on where we've come from. Anybody can make a podcast about how bad Saint Anger is, and we're about 8-9 years late, making that podcast.
Yeah, more than halfway through their career.
Right. So I mean, we've got 2 new albums since then, and we just got to go back to the beginning, man. What made Metallica?
Thrash metal.
Thrash metal.
Because I love to hear it, no matter how many times I have. What is thrash metal, Dan?
Oh man, so thrash metal is kind of like a mixture of so you've got Iron Maiden is on one side of the spectrum in the sense that they are what I would consider to be the essential definition of heavy metal. A lot of old guys are going to say it's Black Sabbath, and they're probably right, but this is not their podcast. So I'm going to go with Iron Maiden as my choice for heavy metal. Okay. But then, what do you do about the kind of the punk rock aspect of thrash metal? Because you take something like Iron Maiden, which is just so up its own butt with solos and atmospheric sounding, melodies. You take that energy and you amp it up by 11 because you basically, shoot cocaine into everyone's brains, and you end up with heavy metal with a more punk rock sensibility. And I think that, to me, that's what thrash metal is. It's like traditional heavy metal, but with a lot more balls. It's a lot more speed. It's a lot more crunch. It's a lot more extremity. It's faster paced songs.
And that kind of fuck you mentality that punk gave you from the early 70s and
absolutely
early 80s. I mean, this just fuck the world. This is what we do. This is what we sound like. Take it or leave it.
Yep.
Mix of attitudes.
Right.
And from that, we get what we're going to be listening to now for anybody that wants to keep up. First thing you hear, you put on Kill 'Em All, and you just get this fade in of
You get assaulted.
the band. That's an even better.
I feel like
it's
I
an
was just
assault
violated.
of volume.
Right.
Everything just coming at you, and
Yeah, I mean, it's coming
do you
in.
know
Like,
what
can you
you're
imagine?
in for?
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? You're holding the vinyl record in your hands, right? And like,
There's a
you've got
blood-soaked
the
hammer you're
blood-soaked
looking at.
hammer on the cover.
Like, what is this shit?
And then suddenly, before you know it, you're getting bludgeoned in the head with that hammer. Like the band doesn't apologize at all. They don't lead you in easily. It is literally just like, yeah, okay, here we are. Now we're thrashing. There's nothing you can do about it. If you don't like it, there's the door. If you make it that far.
I was going to say, do you make it that far? Because you've just been dead.
No, I mean, I remember definitely being firmly planted right there, and I'd like to be that guy that says, oh yeah, I got it way back in the day, and I heard the No Life Till Leather demo tape before that. I'm not that guy, okay? I'm a kid that listened to Metallica when Metallica probably wasn't even making this kind of music anymore.
Oh,
but
no, Justice was the first album I ever got as a kid, first cassette tape.
yeah,
I mean, that was the first cassette tape I got, and then...
you still got that?
No, the only cassette tape I got is a Kill 'Em All cassette tape.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what happened to the other ones. Yeah,
Have to
Justice
bring
was
that
the
over
first one.
sometime. We'll jam it in my.
Oh, yeah.
I got one of those like retro things for Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
It's got like a tape player, a vinyl player, CD player.
Yeah, put them all in, whole collection.
Yeah, dude. 3 versions of Kill 'Em All.
That's right, all running
Play
at the
them all
same
at the same time. Yeah. Kill 'Em All was aggressive. Hetfield's voice had a snarl to it that was just. I mean, it was really refreshing at the time, I think, and especially for me. I mean, for the longest time, Kill 'Em All was probably the most aggressive album that I had. It was the one that definitely made my parents the most uncomfortable.
Can't imagine why.
Right. I mean, it's just solos, balls to the wall thrashing.
Mind-melting metal.
Right. I mean, it's I have nothing but good things to say about Kill 'Em All.
What's your favorite song?
Oh man, I'm a really big fan of Phantom Lord.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
that's so joking. Just the same thing I was gonna say. Just the way that song is put together, melodic breakdown, killer solos. All the lyrics are just it grabs you by the balls.
Right. Well, I like to how it starts off like kind of little like there's like 2 seconds of like atmospheric sound, and then it's like, no, dude, this is Kill 'Em All. It's like you're right back in.
That's
I
right.
mean,
Like and begin.
it's like, all right, guys, here's your break. Oh, break's over. Like,
And we're back to kicking ass.
right. There's no middle ground there.
I dig the fact that this is an album that has a bass solo on it.
Oh,
Right.
wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
And for people that had seen Metallica up till that point, it was not new to listen to Cliff Burton play this very bass solo, which is Anesthesia.
I still don't think it's even really a popular thing today, with even in live venues. I mean, how often do you see bass players play solos? I mean,
Bass
Robert
players really
does, but
aren't. Bass players really aren't.
it's just not.
Focused.
There aren't.
Yeah.
Well, there's 2 types
It's
of
the
bass
skill
player.
level to even be able to play a solo.
Well, there's literally 2 types of bass player, though, right? There's people that can play the bass, and then there's everyone else. In the sense
enough.
that a lot of people think that they can just strap a bass on and they can play really basic versions of what the guitar
Just
player is
slap it.
playing. Yeah, and it's just, it's just not. It's not helpful to the overall sound. And I think that was the interesting thing about Cliff Burton was that he was like, no, I'm in Metallica. I can thrash just as hard as anyone else. I can come up with my own unique compositions. And you didn't hear that. And what's funny is that Anesthesia really is probably the most melodic moment on the
Oh my
record.
gosh, the intricacies of the notes that he plays. I mean, you don't hear anybody play that style. I don't think I can ever recall anybody who's ever played bass like that since then, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
not in recent memory.
I mean, if you can find me a bass player that can play intricate solos like that, or just to play the parts. I mean, listen, Master of Puppets, I think it's really noticeable with his bass lines. I mean, half the music starts off with any kind of bass solo from him in the first place.
Yeah.
One of the major scrutinies I hear of bass players is you're either a good bass player or you play the bass like a guitar.
right.
And Cliff Burton is the only bass player I've ever heard who plays the bass like a guitar.
right.
But he's playing bass.
He probably could have played guitar.
Other
honestly.
guys just play
More than
like, okay,
likely,
what's
yeah.
the guitar player playing? He's playing open, he's playing 3, he's playing 5, and the bass player's just following right along. Cliff Burton's the only bass player I know who plays it like a guitar, but plays it like a bass. It really is. I wouldn't call it a unique style, but it's definitely his style.
Keep in mind, this was take one.
Yeah, no kidding. They were just like, you know what, done. Just stop it
They
there.
just turned
done.
the tape recorder on and we're like, all right, yeah, I mean, if you want
Warm
to.
up.
If
Yeah.
it sounds bad, we just won't put it on the record. And then, he drops that slab of
I just
molten
would have
metal on
loved
us
to
and-
have seen the look on Johnny Zulu's face when they're doing this. He's just like, you know what, this is fucking great.
Yeah,
Done. That's it. That's a song on the album.
let's do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cliff, you good? Yep. Okay.
Next.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked Phantom Lord, obviously Anesthesia. I mean, there's not really there's no songs on Kill 'Em All where I'm like, yeah, except that one. That's the
Yeah.
one I always skip.
Meta Militia's another one I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, oh yeah. That one's good. Seek and Destroy, obviously
The
all-time
classics.
classic.
Four Horsemen. I mean,
Motor Breath. They're all great. The downside thing I will say to Kill 'Em All is that it is the least musically interesting album that Metallica released, and that Kill 'Em All was all about energy. It was an establishment. This was the new norm.
Yep.
This is what metal sounds like now, kids. I hope you're on board.
fast, crazy, one speed on.
Right. Hetfield sounds amazing. Hammett sounds great. Everything flows together really well. The problem with Kill 'Em All, though, is that you have it's not a very dynamic record. It's not to say that there's not dynamics in it. I mean, there are melodic segments in there, but nothing like we would hear on Puppets or
No, as a
on
whole, it's
Lightning.
just pretty much one speed, one dynamic from start to finish.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but the thing about a band in a full career is to see versatility. Where you did this one really great thing for us. What else can you do?
Yeah, what's the next step for you guys?
And the next step was Ride the Lightning.
And what a difference in pace that was from the first album.
Right. I mean, it starts off with a melodic intro, which eventually does also start to. It still picks up the hammer and beats you to half to death with it. But only
Multiple
half
times.
only half to death.
You're not completely dead. You're just almost dead.
Right. Well, and what's interesting about Lightning, too, is that it's more socially conscious, I think, than Kill 'Em All was. Kill 'Em All was all like, I hate you, I'm going to spit in your face, I'm going to piss all over your family.
This
it was
tackles more social issues that you would not
this
expect
this
from a
one's
band
talking
like
about
this.
nuclear war and, problems with the justice system, which they would revisit
Oh,
later.
gosh. Repeatedly throughout their career.
Right. And, Lightning was just, I mean, it was all around, it was the real deal. It was the total package in the sense that you have very complex melodic songs that are still heavy as they could be at that time. It's just, everything sounds bigger on Lightning.
Oh, which I think is probably why that band took a step forward and is head and shoulders above everybody else in that time period. Everyone else on their second, third album was pretty much a repeat of the first album.
Correct.
And most of the bands who failed in the 80s, I mean, unfortunately, they followed the same recipe as their first previous albums. And very few bands can be successful. I mean, I think bands like Slayer are the only ones that you can think of that pretty much stay pretty
Slayer
similar.
sounds like Slayer.
Yeah, I
all
mean,
the time.
they're going to sound that way from the beginning as to the end. Whereas Metallica, you got that progression. I think that proves why that they were head and shoulders above everybody else when this album came out.
Yeah, I mean, Lightning. There's just nothing I can say about Lightning that's critical. It's in a sense one of the perfect Metallica records.
Mm-hmm.
Ride the Lightning to me was always that record. It's an example of a band. If your complaint about a band that you like is that the first album sounded way better than the second album, or it didn't sound like the same band, whatever reason, the music was too thick, it was too thin, it was too slow, it was too this, it was too that. Ride the Lightning is an example of the exact same band, to me, the exact same band, the exact same sound, but improved on.
Right.
If you could get Kill 'Em All mixed, and I'm going to use the word thick because the guitar is just, it's obviously...
It's like razor wire.
More
Yeah.
time
I was gonna say,
was put into Ride the Lightning's guitar tone.
Oh, yeah.
Bass is still present. Drums are still present. Vocals, it's all the same. It's just a little bit better.
Kill 'Em All sounds like it was recorded
And
through a
Puppets
tape
was
recorder.
even better.
Right, yeah. Because it probably
same.
was.
Yeah, it probably was through a tape recorder.
I mean,
Here's $100. We got to reproduce this album.
Right. Well, and yeah, I mean, obviously, it's thicker, it's chunkier on Lightning. and I mean, it just the solos are still cutting though, and it actually accentuates the solos more, cutting through that beefy guitar tone. I think they really approached more of a wall of noise on.
Oh yeah,
which is weird because like, how many bands can you name that got 100% more melodic on their second record, but 100 times heavier? How does
it's
that
almost
work?
like it's almost like an oxymoron. Like, does that even exist?
Right?
Well, it does.
Yeah,
Ride
it
the
does.
Lightning.
It's called Ride the Lightning.
It's Ride the
Yeah,
Lightning.
you love it. Yeah.
Oh, I think for me, especially being someone who plays lead guitar, the progression from Kirk's solos from Kill 'Em All to Ride the Lightning is just pure masterly. To take the solos he had from Kill 'Em All, where it's just 1,000 notes a second, and in Ride the Lightning, you can hear feeling, like you can feel how he feels when he writes these solos, especially Fade to Black. I mean, and he's talked numerous times about when he wrote that solo, they were on the road, their band gear had just been stolen, they didn't know if they were going to be able to recover from that.
Right.
He was depressed. I mean, you can feel that stuff in their music in the second one, the feeling and the emotion and stuff, but especially in James's lyrics.
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's
What's your top Kirk Hammett solo?
Oh man, that's a tough one to nail down off the hat.
way to just drop that bomb.
I know, no shit. A Ride the Lightning solo is definitely up there as one of my one or two for sure. Cthulhu's another one I was always a big fan of, just because how melodic it is. It's all over the place. Ride the Lightning is probably my favorite. I revert to that all the time.
As much
Just
as I would like to
crazy.
say that Unforgiven
Crazy.
is not the best solo he's ever played, it is.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. It is definitely, for what it is and for the style he plays and for as great as it sounds, yeah, it's definitely one of his best solos.
Well, the thing about Kirk on Lightning is I think Lightning in a lot of ways was Kirk's first album.
Well, and I agree with you too. I mean, because he was coming into pre-written lyrics or pre-written music. So yeah, in a sense, this was his first album where he brought his own ideas, his own fresh material.
But I mean, the songs were basically there on Kill 'Em All, you know. He just, he'd play the solos the way he wanted to play them. That was really the only creative.
Yeah, I mean,
everything else was more or less written by Mustaine.
Yeah, he had no input. Ride the Lightning,
least that's
you
what he
definitely
would
see
tell
his
us.
influence in the band
a
for sure.
lot of Kill 'Em All was written by Mustaine.
That's what Dave would tell us. Yeah.
Yep, right. And Dave, if you're listening, we get it, buddy. We get it.
Dude, anytime you want to come over and just get a big hug, you got
I
one,
love
buddy.
Megadeth just as much as I love Metallica, so you're
The
good.
name of the song is Mechanics, depending on what day it is.
Yeah, that's right. And who's asking?
Yeah, I mean, oh my goodness. We're listening to Trapped Under Ice right now, and it just really is reinforcing to me how badass of a song that is. The energy is still there. Lars sounds better. Well, Lars sounds better on these first three albums than he sounds for the rest of his career.
I'm going to commit a little bit of blasphemy here and say this album almost sounds like an 80s record.
Well,
Listening to Ride the Lightning.
it is an 80s
Well, there's that. Well,
record.
it was made in the 80s, but it never sounded like an 80s record. But if you listen,
It sounded more modern at the time.
it's a little
for sure.
more like
Okay,
an
that
80s
gets,
record.
okay, so it's 'cause I think I get what he's saying there.
I mean, if you told me it was a glam rock band, I would almost believe you. I would
Yeah,
actually
I
say
could
this
see
is
that.
the heaviest
I could see
glam
that.
band I've ever heard.
Yeah, I could see that. Of course, I thought that about the Black Album, but you know,
Well, and look at that. This was the most commercial successful album of all time.
very true. I mean, and so like you take a record like Lightning, right? And you're like, it's perfect. There's literally nothing the band can do at this point that would be better than that.
One
and
would
then they
think.
put out
And
puppets.
then they put out Puppets.
Yeah, you're like,
You're like,
oh
here,
my
let's
God.
take another
Yeah.
giant step forward.
And yeah, that's when all the church people had to be like, yeah, this band's obviously sold their souls to Satan because there's no way they could just continuously create material that's this good.
And the awesome part is by this point in their career, they were so huge and so popular from playing live and were playing so awesome at it that nobody had heard of them outside of their
Circles.
their inner circles. Like, I mean, these guys were playing sold out arenas and stuff before, like they said, before MTV even knew who the hell they were.
Right. Yeah, no videos.
That's right. Yeah,
nothing.
like who the hell is this band that's selling, just an asinine amount of records?
The one thing about Metallica that I've always noticed through their first 5 albums, they had a habit of starting very small, almost like you were trying to trick the other people in the house into what you were listening to. So Kill 'Em All starts silent, and then it fades into this onslaught. Ride the Lightning, you get that signature James Hetfield, very pretty classical guitar. Same thing with Master of Puppets. You get this very dissonant, very classically inspired intro that just builds to the onslaught that
I
is
say
Battery.
you get
This little sense
thrashed
of security.
to death.
That's
I mean,
right.
you're just
You feel secure and safe for the first 10 seconds. Like, okay, this is going to be fun. And then it's like, Jesus, what the fuck is going on?
yeah. You're like, okay, so they finally took a chill pill. It's gonna be okay.
Like, okay.
It's
and
not
bam,
okay. 1 minute in, it's not okay. You're fighting for your life.
Someone's killing me with a battery right now.
Which is funny too, because when I first heard Battery, I thought, wow, it's like Kill 'Em All again. Like, I mean, it's it's got all the modern production and it sounds better and it's
quality
just,
was great.
It flows, yeah, but like, I mean, it's that energy, that punk energy is back, and you're like, oh my goodness. And granted, this is at a time though, at this point where thrash metal is now an accepted thing.
Yes. It's commercially acceptable.
There were certainly heavier bands than Metallica at this point.
Oh, sure.
But, it didn't matter because they did what they did so well that nobody cared about that stuff. I swear it wasn't until the 90s that people started being like, this isn't heavy, so I hate it. Like, I mean.
Is The Thing That Should Not Be still the heaviest song ever recorded?
That'd be a solid no, Joe. But but at the time,
yeah, I mean, what would have been? What, Drop D? So yeah,
I mean,
for them that would have been.
I listened to a lot of doom metal bands like My Dying Bride and stuff like that, and that's a lot heavier, but in a different kind of way.
For Metallica, Dan, it was heavy.
Not compared to Justice, but we're not talking about Justice yet. No, I mean, God, Puppets is just so great. I mean, it's hard to, it's like Lightning. There's really not a lot of bad things to say about Puppets. I mean, it more melodic than Ride the Lightning, heavier than Ride the Lightning. I mean, it just.
See, I think this is Lars's best album. Is this?
I
think
see
he
that.
plays the best on this album. He just sounds good on this album.
He sounds angry.
Yeah,
And, they were all angry.
I heard Bob
Except
Rock
maybe
say in an
Cliff.
interview once about Lars that he's the only drummer that actually plays with the music. That's always been one thing about him that I do look up to, is he plays with what is going on around him.
that little Danish guy.
Which begs the question, is the drummer supposed to be doing that or is he supposed to be playing the beat? But it works for what he does.
I was gonna say it fits well with them. So
Well,
I guess
he follows James, which is
probably a smart thing.
It's a little different, though.
I mean, I would follow James if I had the option.
It's a little different, though.
Yeah,
in the sense that it's not typically what drummers do.
I'm
Lars
the
is
drummer.
definitely,
I play the beat.
He's definitely
keep it
not my
together.
favorite drummer, but there's something to be said though about like how he. So like one time I was listening to I don't think it was off Puppet. Maybe it was off Puppet. No, it was Orion. I was listening to Orion, and
Another one of my favorites.
and my dad came in, and my dad never has anything good to say about anything released before 1970, or anything after 1970 rather. But we were listening to Orion, and he's like, "Yeah, you hear that drummer? That's the only good drummer I've ever heard you listen to."
Oh, wow.
Because it was very,
Really?
it was in the pocket. And again, you can't say anything about the way Lars drums sound. I mean, they sound perfect. Just huge, two bass pedals. And yes, I can tell the difference between a double bass pedal
pedals
and
and
two bass drums
bass drums.
set up next to each other, And it sounds good. It sounds solid. It's right in the pocket. He's not going to ever win any awards for being a mega technical drummer or anything of that nature, but Lars was a very good backbone to the band.
And Hetfield sounds so much different on this album as the first two too, which is awesome.
His singing came a long way.
Yep.
Yeah.
You could definitely tell that he had actually put some time and effort into vocals and not just get up there and bark
Right.
or scream or
And that's hard to do in metal.
Yeah,
That's
no kidding. He actually had to sing some of these parts. I mean, it's just, and probably, let's be honest too, they were what, 17, 18 when they started?
Yeah, I mean,
So by the time this comes out, they're, in their early 20s. So, I mean, sure, he probably does sound a lot different. He didn't want to sing in the first place. So, I mean, that has come a long way.
yeah, for sure. I mean,
Like, who else is going to do it? And James is like, I guess I will.
I guess I'll do it. Yeah, Well, and when he started, it was an easier deal than it became. This is a guy that eventually starts doing vocal warm ups before shows. Which is just crazy in the general idea of metal as we think of it.
Yep.
In metal, you're supposed to just get up there and do it. You're not supposed to practice. You're not
What,
supposed
like
to,
Axl Rose? Have a bottle of champagne and smoke some cigars?
Exactly.
I'm ready to go.
One of the biggest things about Metallica, though, is you get to something like Puppets, and I like Puppets. I thought it was aggressive. I thought it was heavy. At the same time, though, I started listening to heavier bands at this point, so I end up with stuff like Slayer.
And
I was getting into death metal a little bit at the time. Again, this is years later, so a lot of that stuff is available. I can't really speak of it as like a time-based thing. I don't know what was going on in the scene at that time. But Metallica, after a while, I felt like I kind of outgrew in a heaviness perspective. And then I heard Justice, and it was all good.
they brought me back.
It really did. And for an album that essentially has no bass.
Oh, I know. Doesn't that just drive you nuts? And it's just that's one of their biggest pet peeves to this date is the no bass that you can hear at all in this album.
Can you imagine if they went back and remixed the originals?
My God.
And I mean, it would be.
I mean, hell, even remastering it, hell, even if you could go back and just redo it.
I'm just going to ask the question. Metallica owns all their own masters. Why have we not gotten And Justice for All with Jason?
Maybe they're mad. Maybe they're mad.
Is
at Jason.
the joke still that funny? Like we were treating him like crap when we first brought him in.
Well, he was the new guy, and he was no Cliff Burton.
That's
let's
right.
just get that out of the way now.
But at this point, okay, the whole joke is supposed to be that he was the new guy and we were hazing him. Okay, is the joke still funny? Or can I have an album with the bass on it?
Yeah, not in 2016. It's not.
Yeah, no. He probably wishes it would have been.
Yeah, I mean, where's our remastered And Justice for All?
I know, kid. You did it with the other albums.
But like, oh my God, Blackened. Blackened just murders me. I can't think of a better song than Blackened off the top of my head most of the time, except Dyer's Eve. It's way better. Check it out. But like, I don't know. Blackened was just so heavy. It kicked in. Lars is in the pocket. James is in the pocket. Kirk's in the pocket. Newsted's somewhere buried in the mix.
And the lyric content. I mean, just a destroying of Earth.
I really do think these are the best lyrics that James ever wrote.
Oh, if not, yeah, right up there with some of the best lyrics for sure.
Well, one thing I noticed is that the songs are a little more personal on Justice too.
Or political. They definitely got more political. And
well, sure, yeah.
Definitely in this album more than they had any other album in the past.
I'm mainly talking about Dyer's Eve, I guess. I love that song so much.
It's a great song. I don't disagree at all. It hits home for you a little bit more than it would for myself.
Growing up in a religious household, a song like Dyer's Eve just like really, it just really sticks with me. I can't really, I don't know. It strikes a chord with me personally.
See, this is a song I think doesn't get enough credit. We're listening to I Am Beholder now.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody ever talks about this song in this album. It's always everything else.
Oh, it's so great. In Flames did a really good cover of this song. Yeah. Not as good as the original, of course.
Another thing about Justice that I'd like to say is, I always thought that Justice was the best musical arrangements that they did. Because Metallica's notoriously had short songs, and they've had long songs. And the joke when they were making Saint Anger was about bringing back Riffarama, to quote Lars. It's like, you guys realize you're never going to make Justice again.
Stop trying.
Where the riffs on Justice flow in a way where, yeah, it's rhythm guitar being taken to its ultimate, like, let's just keep building and building and building. But it makes sense. You can't just decide we're going to play the rhythm part longer and it's going to sound cool. Because these are some of the best riffs that they ever wrote.
What I find interesting about Justice is it was the first album where James started sounding more like the modern James Hetfield.
Yeah, that kind of roar, deep sounding Hetfield.
He was screaming just as much as he was singing, but he was doing both.
It was
at the same time. Yeah. It was definitely a more aggressive record. You could tell they were really pissed off about literally everything.
You were more scared of Hetfield at this point than you were previously in the past.
Right. You know,
this
you're
is
like, I don't know if I would hang out with
this
this
guy. They recorded before he blew his voice out.
Yep.
And the modern Hetfield began.
Yeah, that's when he started taking singing lessons and stuff, you know. But I mean, he sounds so great on One. I mean, it's just, you know, the melodic. I mean, he had sang before, you know, on songs like Fade to Black and stuff. And it was okay, but it still sounded like that guy that was shouting on Kill 'Em Alls trying to sing. He sounds like Black Album Hetfield on One, you know? And It was a big achievement for him, which is weird because as a metalhead, I'm not really that concerned about how well someone sings. But like
It changes the dynamic of the band, I think, though, with having him sound here he does here as opposed to Kill 'Em All or Ride the Lightning.
Well, and you're thinking you've got Ride the Lightning and Puppets right in a row, and it's like, how much more can the band evolve? I mean, well, obviously they can. They can get heavier, they can get more melodic, they can have better vocals, better production, minus the fact that there's no bass.
Joe, what's your favorite on this album?
On Justice?
Yeah.
One is actually my top Metallica song, period. So I have to say that it's one.
I'm afraid
The subject matter,
for
the
whatever
lyrics,
reason.
it's
just the weirdest
composition, the guitar parts that I still pick out things I've never heard before every time I listen to it.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree with you
100%.
there. It's a classic. Fred Ends of Sanity has got to be mine for sure. It's such a weird sounding song. It's a weird subject matter. The guitar riffs. I mean, as someone who plays, it's just like when I first started learning the song, it was like I played through it. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what is like? How would what are these riffs? Don't make sense. Like,
Freight Ends of Sanity is the only Metallica song I've ever really desired to play live, but I've never been able to do it.
It's just such
just
a
so you can
weird-
do the Wizard of Oz
Yep.
in the very beginning.
just to get the crowd going. Oh, for sure. It's just a jacked up song to play, but God, it's just great.
It's also the greatest thing Lars ever did vocally.
True.
That's
True.
right. That's right. It's Lars.
It is Lars. I'm pretty sure it's actually from the movie.
No, it's
No,
Lars.
it's Lars.
I'll have to look that up later.
I thought he
Pitch
confirmed that in
down,
an interview.
but it's him.
I thought he confirmed that.
And you talk about Dyer's Eve. Like, what is it about Dyer's Eve?
Aggression. My favorite thing about metal is aggression, not necessarily heaviness. Heaviness is a great part of it, but there's so much anger and so much aggression in Dyer's Eve. It just vocally, guitar-wise, drum-wise. I mean, it is literally the best album closer I've ever heard. It sums up everything we've experienced up to that point into one song, and I just can't. I can't let it go as a song and as just kind of an anthem for heavy metal music at that time. A lot of people that were listening to Metallica, like me, maybe, had come from religious backgrounds, had always kind of felt like they weren't as in control of their life as they could have been. So for something like Dyer's Eve to just be this, the world is a terrible, messed up place, and I wasn't properly prepared for it. I was told to be nice to everyone. Well, not everyone was nice to me,
Right.
It just really cuts deep for me.
What's your guys' take on doing instrumentals up to this point? Because up until including Justice, they always had an 8, 7, 8, 9 minute instrumental
solid
piece
instrumental
of music.
song. Yeah.
It was just
I think
great from beginning to end, and they got away with that for the better part. 3 albums for sure?
Yeah, I mean,
4.
I think Metallica has composed some of the most interesting instrumental songs I've ever heard. I know they took a lot of that from Blue Oyster Cult and a little bit from Judas Priest, but the way that they do it is almost... It's not about how pretty it is, it's about how they're doing it. Nobody really did it with instrumental the way they do.
I'm a big fan of the fact that those are instrumental songs that are interesting from beginning to end. Even for like the non-musician, I think instrumentals are primarily written for musicians. And as a vocalist myself, I'm typically not as drawn to instrumentals. But with Metallica, they did it in such a way to where the songs would build and build and build and build, and it really, to a certain extent, it was they were just as good as songs as what was on the rest of the record, and you weren't thinking about the fact that Hetfield's not barking over them.
I know, it's almost like telling a story through music. I mean, I only bring that up because "To Live Is to Die" in this album is my favorite instrumental from them.
Oh yeah,
and when I listen to that, I just feel. Like, can one feel their sadness at the loss of Cliff Burton at the time? I mean, you can definitely feel it in the riffs and that. And like with Dyer's Eve for You, like that song has a lot of personal meaning for me. And so I was just curious what you guys' thoughts were on instrumentals up to that point, because as everyone knows, you get to the Black Album, they don't do it. Load, Reload, they don't have any.
Right.
Saint Anger, there are no solos, period, which we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we might need a totally different podcast for Saint Anger.
Oh man,
Can we do a part 2?
Maybe at
probably
some
could
point.
at this point. We're not even talking about S&M.
Well, you mean like cut it here and then do the rest of the albums in a different podcast?
No, I meant just Saint Anger.
it's right. We're doing Metallica, and then there's Metallica.
The longest
Saint Anger.
podcast ever recorded.
I might need
to
be a few beers in for that one.
I was gonna say, let me tell you something, Lars.
Right. Yeah. If I may speak to the band directly here.
That's right, Lars. I'm talking to you.
Right. It's cool though. To be honest with you, and this could just be because I'm a lead singer type personality, I didn't really notice that the other albums didn't really have instrumentals on them.
That's one of the first things I'm like, damn it, where's the instrumental?
But that's not to take away.
James Kirk.
So, I mean, we roll into the Black Album, right? The Black Album is really, obviously the most transitional album for a band that you can imagine. This is where we're more like, people used to call them hard rockica once they put out the Black Album.
Label change.
But I would disagree, although I wouldn't go as far as to call the Black Album straight thrash metal. It is still very much a heavy metal record in every sense of the word. And I think as far as making something that was more digestible, because I think the thing about Kill 'Em All, Puppets, Ride the Lightning, Justice, those are records that are for people that like heavy metal. The Black Album is a record that everyone can enjoy.
Yeah, it's a crossover album. It's something commercial that everyone's going to get into.
Right. You know, you've got the ballads, you know, even if you're not a big fan of, you know, songs like Through the Never or The God That Failed or
The God That Failed, one of my favorites from that album.
Yeah, it's so
My
good.
Friend of Misery is my favorite song on that album for sure.
Yeah, and those are great songs. But, you know, your girlfriend also likes, you know, Nothing Else Matters. And The Unforgiven, you know.
It's about you, I swear.
Right, yeah, it's totally about
Love you, baby.
I know the band, and I had James write this song about you. You know, I wrote it actually. It was me. Don't look in the booklet of the album. It's
One thing
definitely
that I
written by
never
me.
hear anybody say about the Black Album is the Black Album is the sound of it and the way that it flows is very obvious influenced by Bob Rock.
Oh yeah,
But it is the only Metallica album that I can honestly say sounds like a good band being challenged by their producer to create something better than what they're capable of.
Well, he had said numerous times that was his whole reason being drawn to Metallica was that they weren't capturing that sound that they could be.
right. It's kind of hard though because I listen to mostly underground metal, so when I hear stuff like that, the only thing that the word that throws up in my head constantly is, you know, mainstream sellout. And I don't think that the
Well,
Black
Dan,
Album
they sell out every time they play, everywhere they play, every seat in the house.
I get it. But you know,
Just being honest here. I mean, come on.
out of the three of us, I wouldn't consider myself to be the biggest Metallica super fan in the room. So when I hear stuff like the Black Album, I do hear a dumbing down of sound.
Sure.
'Cause I miss the aggression of Dyer's Eve and Blackened and Master of Puppets and Battery, and I miss all that. But here's the thing too. You know, it's a free country. I can go back and listen to those songs anytime I want to. So it's not like in them putting out a more mainstream record that I have somehow lost everything that was. You know, you can't go into a band's discography, and that's part of the reason why I like this discography discussion idea so much. Is that you can't dig into a band's discography and say, okay, I like everything up until the Black Album,
And then I stopped listening.
as if the Black Album existing somehow invalidates what has come before. And that's just not true at all. There are some fantastic songs on Black Album. There aren't any, you know, like any other Metallica record. There is not anything that I'm like, this is good, this is good, this is garbage. This is also garbage, you know. You could maybe make the argument about Something Else Matters, but in the sense of dynamics and the band, you know how we've been talking about the band constantly evolving, it was an evolution.
It was big
it
for
wasn't
them.
beat you. Yeah, it was maybe the first time where they were like, okay, maybe this time we won't beat you in the head with the hammer, you know?
James is like, what? I got to sing it? Oh, okay. I'll try that.
Right. And, you know, it was a really great song. It was a big hit for them. They were the first Metallica hits, and you know, you can't fault your favorite band for becoming everyone's favorite band.
Oh, God, no. I mean,
You know,
And it's almost an entire album of hits.
yes.
Which is very hard to do.
I got
Right,
dates
okay.
with girls in high school because I liked Metallica. I mean, that's crazy. I never got any dates for liking Carcass. It's just
What you mean? She just like I want to go see them. You're like, all right.
Yeah, I want to go see Regurgitated Guts. It's okay. But yeah, Metallica writes really cool songs like Nothing Else Matters and The Unforgiven, and it was the first record where it was like everybody could get it, like you got it.
Do you think the album would have been different had they had gone with, instead of Enter Sandman as the first single, if Bob Rock had his way, he wanted Holier Than Thou to be the first single? Do you think it would have changed the way the album was successful?
I doubt it.
Because I always thought that it was an interesting opinion that he was so adamant about wanting Holier to be the first single as opposed to Sand.
I think it
makes me wonder if it would have been different or not.
I think it would have been the same, because the rest of the record still exists in its whole form.
Would you have done Holier as the? Would you go if you had to choose between the two? Would you still have done Sandman as the first single? Or would you go Holier Than Thou?
Absolutely, go with Sandman.
Think so?
In a world where you can argue
Sandman's the
about what
ultimate
are the
heavy metal
top
hit
5
single.
riffs of all time, Sandman, you're splitting hairs.
Oh, sure.
Because it's up there. It's one of the riffs when you hear it.
Everybody
You know
knows what
exactly
Sandman
what it
is
is.
from the first note.
I mean, sadly, the song almost makes me sick to listen to now.
Oh, I do agree.
Because I've heard it so many times.
When I listen to the Black Album, I always, most of the time, will skip that.
But how many songs can you say that about?
Unforgiven. Oh, no.
Skip
that stuff. I like the stuff on there that's not as, not as overplayed as maybe that stuff was.
I just think this record really challenged heavy metal as a genre in the sense that, like...
Well, it brought it forefront, too. I mean, so, like, let's see, by this point, they had done a couple of videos from the Justice album. They were being played on MTV a little bit. They were playing sold-out arenas as headliners for other, metal bands that weren't maybe on the backside of their career, perhaps.
Yeah, they weren't, they weren't Metallica famous,
And so then this brings us to the time period where they play with Guns N' Roses.
So who wants to tell the story in case somebody doesn't
I think it's
know?
probably the freshest in Josh's mind, so I'm going to let him take the floor.
Oh, my
on this one.
gosh. Well, Lars had this great idea, and I think that they come up with the concept at the Freddie Mercury tribute concert. And Lars and Slash got this great idea to do a U.S. tour together. Well, it ends up happening, and I would think, the summer of '92? Is that what it was?
I'm not sure what year it was, but it sounded like a great idea.
Yeah, on paper it sounded like the two. They were. I mean, at the time, it's
two biggest heavy metal bands
to Guns N' Roses
ever.
credit,
Yeah.
I hate Axl Rose with a passion. Don't care if you're listening, Axl. Hate that guy, but I respect Slash. And at the time, everyone knows Guns N' Roses and Metallica were they were it. They were the shit in the early '90s.
Yeah.
They do this tour together, and they had numerous concerts where Axl would throw these fits, cut their set short. Metallica would go on and play the extra half hour.
Save the day, basically.
Yeah, basically, we're here for the fans. We're here to play music. Axl throw these prima donna little attitudes. They're at Montreal. Hetfield goes up in flames, gets injured. Metallica's in serious doubt. He gets seriously injured, standing in some pyrotechnics.
The fans destroy the city.
Yeah, there's a huge riot. Axl Rose could have gone on and played this nice set to cover. Instead, throws this big fit. In short, that the tour was just a disaster. They couldn't get along. Axl Rose's attitude got in the way, and it's just...
And for all the people that say that white people don't riot and loot, this is an example of white people rioting and looting.
Watch Montreal's concert. Or Toronto, one of them. It was either
And this
Montreal
is
or Toronto.
Canada,
Yeah,
where they have soccer riots like Europe, right?
Canadians
yeah, pretty much.
were flipping cars. They were burning things. I mean,
They were
buildings
pretty
on fire.
pissed off, that they were promised the greatest metal show ever.
That's
and,
right. Yeah, and then they got Axl Rose. He got
they
two
got a
songs in and he
crispy
quit.
James Hetfield. It's
Axl was drafted to sing for AC/DC.
Oh my gosh! Has anybody seen pictures of him recently? I mean, he is.
Yeah, he's
good.
a thing. Yeah.
He wants you to think he looks the same.
Don't worry, guys. There will be a Guns N' Roses podcast.
Yeah. Anywho.
Probably sooner than later. But yeah, I mean, it was strange with Metallica in that they put out Black Album, and I would say most of what the underground metal fans had to say, well, I mean, if you're a true underground metal fan, you stop listening to Metallica whenever they put out a video for one.
Yeah,
right?
I was gonna say Justice, but they would have been like done.
Or like all the way back
Maybe
when
the Puppets would have been done.
Yeah. I mean, all the way back when they put out Lightning, it's like, oh, there's a melodic intro.
Done.
I'm done.
What the hell
It's
is
not
Fade to
like
Black?
Kill 'Em All, Exodus for Life. But
No, that was just Bailoff.
right. Oh man.
Meanwhile, Mustaine's over going, "What the hell is going? What did I do wrong here?
Right.
I need to quit drinking."
Yeah, we're purposely not talking about Megadeth because it will take over the entire
That's
podcast.
right. Like I said, I love Megadeth still.
But the thing is that everything that the underground metal fans were afraid of happening with the Black Album absolutely happened on Load. I mean,
Yep.
my God. I mean, bluesy, dare I say, country.
Cut our hair.
In places. Cut our hair.
We're
Wear
in
business
pimp suits. We
yeah.
smoke cigars. We drink scotch and wine.
I mean, does Load succeed as a heavy metal record? Absolutely not.
Nope.
Because it is not a heavy metal record.
If you go through the metal checklist, it does not check anything off
A single box.
No.
It is just a bluesy hard rock record that I wish I could say was bad, but really isn't.
I still love Load.
There
to
is
this day.
very little wrong with Load and Reload.
Absolutely. I
And
mean,
you kind of have to talk about them both at
yeah.
the same
Can we just
time.
talk about them as if
Load,
they're the same
Reload is
album?
the same.
They
It's
were
basically a
recorded at the
Mecca
same
album.
time.
Yeah.
They basically had 40 songs and just whittled
Yeah.
it down to those two albums.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Well, again, it's another step forward in their career. It's a progression of where they were in the mid '90s to the late '90s. It was a different style of music. I mean, by that point, you had bands like Limp Bizkit, Korn, Rage, like all those bands. It was more like a heavier 7-string sound, Seven Dust. I mean, stuff like that.
the rise of new metal.
Yeah, new metal.
Yeah.
I mean, so the traditional sense of 80s metal, I think, was gone by this point in the '90s. There was no such thing as, at least to me, there was no such thing as metal.
Well, okay, so underground metal fan here is going to step in for a couple of seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, underground metal fan.
Death metal was huge in the 90s. Bands like Carcass, Obituary, all Entombed. There were amazing metal bands in the 90s. The thing is, though, is all the people that quit listening to Metallica back with Justice, and those are all the guys that are still listening to, like Exodus and Testament and Entombed. And there is nothing wrong with any of the bands I'm saying right now.
No, gosh, no.
But here's the thing. You've got Metallica, who is at this point has blasted off into space and is no longer on the same planet as those bands. Not necessarily.
They just won a Grammy on the Black Album, okay? What metal band was going to be doing
I mean,
that?
at this point, Metallica has investors
Jethro
to
Tull.
please. They do. They absolutely...
Ixnay on the Ethrotel.
Okay, well, so they've got investors to please now. Okay, they're the band that, they don't want your girlfriend to just show... They don't want a guy to show his girlfriend 2 songs off of a Metallica record. They want the girlfriend to buy the record at this point.
Yep.
And so more heartfelt songs. Unforgiven 2, jumps out there at me. There are just songs. Those songs are written for everybody. They basically hit the jackpot with Enter Sandman. So you get a lot of songs like Fuel.
That was a springboard.
And The Memory Remains.
King Nothing, which
King
is
Nothing,
just
that's a King
Sandman
Nothing was
again.
another
King Nothing.
Yep.
Those are all Enter Sandman type songs that the band felt like they absolutely had to make in order to keep people happy. And they were still great songs because you got to remember that these are still some of the best songwriters that exist. So yeah, I'm sorry, they're not playing 1,000 beats a minute, and Hetfield's not barking out as if it's still 1983. But you've got 90s Metallica is not the same Metallica that existed in the 80s, and I think we're at a point now where we can safely say that it represented itself for its time.
Well, and don't forget, this was the first set of albums too that I think you had lyrical and musical, influences from all 4 of the guys rather than James and Lars going off for 6 months, writing everything, and then coming in and said, all right, this is what you're playing, Jason, this is what you're playing, Kirk.
Right.
You could definitely
that's
feel
the
the
distinction
influences.
that they made because historically it was give us your ideas and then we'll go off and
We'll
figure
go off
it
and
out.
write something about it.
I mean,
Right.
if anybody needs proof that Kirk Hammett is the greatest guitarist ever, he actually wrote the famous Sandman riff that everybody loves and
He had it on a
tributes to
cassette
James
tape
Hetfield.
for years.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
But this was the album where they said, these are the songs, now let's write them together, which led to, historically, very stressful recording sessions of, to use Bob Rock's explanation, figuring it out.
Well, sure, you got 4 guys in the room together trying to come up,
Come on, Mr. Guitarist of the Year.
I know.
Mr. People's Choice.
That's right. You won Guitar World 3 times. Come on, Kirk.
Right.
If you had to pick one, what is the weirdest Metallica song that exists?
Mama Said.
See, I always just exclude that one altogether because that would be the given. I think for me, if you take that one out, Where the Wild Things Are is a weird.
Okay.
I love that song.
Okay.
But it is such a weird song for
Fair
me
enough.
for those 2 albums.
Fair enough.
There's not a weird song on Load. It's Reload that gets really
Your
just
opinion
really out there.
is equal to mine. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like, this is awkward. I like it in a weird way, but
As much as I like it, when I think weird, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit, I think of the I Disappear single. And the reason I'm talking about it now
It's been
is
a long time since I heard
is
this.
the
I know.
last
I
time.
just listened to it yesterday.
Yeah.
I Disappear was the last
would.
time you heard, in my opinion, this
The load,
Metallica.
reload sound.
Yeah.
Because we heard I Disappear when it was on Mission Impossible 2's soundtrack, and we all said, if this is what the new album sounds like, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, bring it.
Alongside with Limp Bizkit was on that soundtrack, right?
No, Godsmack.
Yeah, it was
Oh, yeah,
Limp
yeah,
Bizkit.
yeah.
Yeah.
Title track.
And this was a weird time too. I remember you'd have Korn, Limp Bizkit, and Metallica on tour.
Well, and this song led
Summer
to the
Sanitarium
Napster
tour.
stuff too.
Huh?
This song was this is what pushed Lars over the edge for the
Oh,
Napster
yeah.
lawsuit was this song here.
Yep.
I love this song, but I always feel like the song was incomplete. Like it was rushed on a
Oh,
time
yeah.
crunch. Like if they could have been able to put the time and resources in the song, it could be so much better.
Yeah.
Such a better track.
Well, I mean, Hetfield spends most of the song just going, yeah.
I'm thinking
Which
of
is
stuff on
like,
the
dude,
spot.
way to just be the stereotype right now. You're there's that picture online of it's got James Hetfield with his mouth open, and it's all like, now we don't know what he's saying here, but there's a 97% chance that it's yeah.
I mean, when you got a gimmick, you got to go with it.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
it's
I mean-
signature Hetfield yell.
Now, speaking as a guy that predominantly listens to metal, I will have to say that Load and Reload was my first kind of heartbreak disappointment with a band, because this just wasn't my Metallica, and the reason for that was because metal fans tend to take ownership over bands that they like. I don't know what it is. It's kind of assholish behavior, but it is absolutely true.
Oh, knowing you, yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, I mean, it would maybe just the assholish behavior, right? But no, so I remember not liking Load and Reload. Like my official answer was,
Nope,
these albums
I'm done.
suck. They're terrible, which wasn't necessarily true, but I listened to bands at the time that still played heavy metal, so I was like, I'm done with Metallica. And I think a lot of that had to do too with the fact that I listened to most of their material at the same time, and so as a metal fan, I remember thinking like, well, these records are clearly better than these records, instead of really listening to it as if over the passage of time, like it was really supposed to be listened to. So needless to say, I was very interested whenever I heard that Metallica, because they disappeared for a while after they released the song "I Disappear." But
Damn you, Napster.
Yeah, I know, right? They disappeared for a while. The whole Napster thing happened. Everybody hates Metallica. Blah 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 blah.
Not
blah,
everybody.
blah.
Not everybody.
Yeah, a lot of people hated Metallica during that time because for some reason Metallica is super evil for releasing something, putting time and effort into something, and people
They were
taking
almost
it
the
for
equivalent
free.
of the evil empire at this time.
But what I don't understand though, as an adult, I see Metallica as being 100% justified about Napster.
Sure, sure.
I mean, and it's really we released this, we put time and effort and money into it, and you people just took it for free. And I used to use the argument that it's not really the same thing as me stealing a physical item, because I'm just taking that physical item and I'm making an exact duplicate of it and I'm taking it with me. Regardless, that's still a sale that should have been made.
Sure.
And you could say, well, Metallica makes millions of dollars and blah, 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 blah. So does that mean it's okay for me to go to Best Buy and just take
a
whatever I
million
want
or
from
a
them?
dollar, it's stealing.
Stealing
it
is still
what it
stealing, because stealing is an action that you make. It's not represented. It's not contextual. It's literally you stole this from someone else, So it's funny. It's funny that I have that opinion now because I very much was not of that opinion at the time because I was a kid. I had no money and I only could download music. But one thing I think we're forgetting to talk about though was the fantastic Garage Inc.
Oh, yeah, because that would have been in between.
The sequel to Garage Days.
Yeah,
Yes.
Garage Days Revisited.
Yeah. And I mean, my God, what a great record. So
whiskey.
here's what's great about Garage Inc. Okay.
Everything?
Disc one is the record that people that liked Load and Reload Metallica.
I was gonna say those were
for.
the modern fans record, and then
the second disc was
the hardcore
was for me,
fans
yeah.
record. Yeah,
It pretty much. I think whenever I opened it up, it just said Dan only listened to disc
I was
two.
gonna say you had
It
your
was-
covers of like Diamond Head.
Oh, it was so good, man! Like
Misfits, like you had everything that
Merciful
you could
Fate,
everything you could dream for on that second
a
album.
Merciful Fate medley. I mean, my God, it was just amazing. I love Garage Inc. And I even like disc one too because
This one's a classic as well. I mean, how could you not like it?
Garage Inc.
Yeah,
is the
It made Bob
charm-
Seger even
it's-
cooler than he already was.
It's charming.
Garage
it's very
Inc. to
charming.
me is the album that says, "Hey, for all the people that think these guys aren't real musicians, they actually do have influences, and here are some of them."
Yeah.
Here's a whole lot of them.
And then you hear
I remember thinking
every bit of
Diamond
it.
Head sounded more like Metallica than Metallica.
I know, right?
Because I
Like,
started
wow.
listening to Diamond Head after that.
You listen
yeah.
to Diamond Head, and you're like, wow, they're good, but I think Metallica plays them better.
Yeah, I mean, it really, Garage Inc. was definitely what I needed, got me interested in the band again. And I was very intrigued once, James is back from, he's back from rehab, Metallica's back. And I remember the very first thing I read about Saint Anger was, it's going to be Justice again.
Oh my God, they touted that for so long. The Justice again. It's a revisit to the aggression and hardcore.
It's Justice again, unless you like Kill 'Em All, because then it's Kill 'Em All again.
I tell you what, had they not said it was going to be Return of Justice and just said there's a new album coming out, I think it might have been a little bit more well receptive.
Would have done better.
Yeah, I think it
I think
would've
if
been
they had just
receptive
been
a lot better.
honest, I think if they had just been honest about it
Oh,
from the
sure.
beginning and just said this is going to be an extremely raw,
Yeah,
underproduced
this is a work in
record.
progress album, guys.
Now-
It may not be your favorite. It's not a record for everyone.
That's right.
I mean, they're Metallica, right? At this point, they don't have to sell that many records.
No.
I'm gonna play a game with
Elektra
the listener.
Records is
okay.
like, no, they needed to
All right,
sell.
listener, I want you to play along. When I count down from 3, I'm going to play a random song from Saint Anger, and you're going to hear the natural reaction of Josh and Dan to whatever that song might be, and that'll tell you really kind of how we all feel. So, ladies and gentlemen, play along if you wish. Pick a track, and in 3, 2, 1.
What is this, like a live track?
Exactly.
Wait, is this a bonus song? Like, is this like at a live venue?
No, they're just warming up.
Oh, it's a demo?
This is dress rehearsal.
Demo track. Okay.
Sound check.
This is the Invisible Kid.
Dude, can you hear those drums?
I know.
I can't unhear them now.
Steve Albini said on a Zayo documentary about how he had listened to Saint Anger so much that he heard, I'm going to get the number wrong, 4 distinctive, horrible snare sounds.
Yeah.
I'm surprised it was only 4.
It's Dear Bob Rock, if I ever meet you in person, I will have this conversation with you. How does making the band sound bad on purpose mean that they're playing in a garage together for the first time?
It doesn't even sound like they're playing in a garage. That's the bad part.
Metallica came from the garage, and Kill 'Em All sounded great. Also, you are Bob Rock. If they wanted to sound like a band recording in a garage for the first time, why wouldn't they go find some kid in his garage and be like, hey, we're Metallica, you want to record us?
Why is James Hetfield...
Do 10 of those!
Why does James Hetfield sound like he's in $1 million recording studio recording the vocals badly, but the rest of the band sounds like they're in a garage?
Well,
I
they don't. The snare just sounds like crap.
No, but like James Hetfield's like way louder than the rest of the mix.
Well,
Probably the way it was mixed.
he is using an SM78, which is one of the greatest microphones of all time.
I don't get it though. Like, why does
Other
he have to be
distinctive
so much
albums recorded
louder?
with
I
that?
mean,
Thriller.
if the idea was to be sound underground, okay. Hint: I've played with bands in garages before, and I guarantee I'm the only person that was not heard. Okay, that's why I started screaming. Like I literally had no volume.
This is just an album I almost feel like they came to the table with they just tried to write it as they recorded it, if that makes sense. Like in previous years, they have all had their ideas on tape. Like Kirk James had riffs on it, and they go with it from there and roll with it. This reminds me of an album to where Hetfield comes back from rehab. They come to the room. They're like, all right, let's make an album. Does anybody get any ideas? No? All right, well, let's just go in the room and just play what we feel, play what happens. And this is what happened. This was, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like an album that they... I don't know, it's hard to put into words. Like, this is an album they didn't go in there and like they just didn't feel it. It was just kind of just really weird vibe, like forced. Like, we got to put out a record, we got to put out an album. It's in our contract. Here it is.
Every time I hear this, I just think, how was everything before this so top notch?
And then this
even
is
the
just
stuff that I didn't
sloppy
like,
and...
even the stuff that I didn't like that was not in styles of music that I enjoyed was still really good for that style of music, you know? And then you're listening to this and you're like, well, this isn't even good metal. If Metallica can't play good metal anymore, I mean, what's even the point? You know?
And lest we say no solos, none at all.
Right, and you know, it'd be different if Metallica was a band that had flirted with no solos before.
Like I remember, and I'll never forget the day listening to this, the day it came out, listening through the entire album, and done and going, what the hell just happened? There's no guitars. Like, what is this the direction we're going? Because as a hardcore fan, I don't know that I could be on board. Like,
right.
I've been on board with everything else. If it would make sense for the song that I have the solos, fine, but it just seems like they went out of their way to not do a solo. Like, there were songs to where I felt like a solo would be coming or should be coming.
Well, that's what Kirk Hammett basically said.
And like, it's like, oh, right here, going to be this awesome. Okay, no, we're going to go into a riff. Cool.
Well, it's like exactly what Kirk Hammett even said, because they're like, well, we don't want it to sound old school and sound dated, so we're not going to put guitar solos because that sounds dated. And Kirk Hammett goes, no, it makes it sound dated to now.
There was
when
those
people
didn't
like,
do solos at the time.
Guess what? Everyone plays solos now. You know, I mean, in 2016, if you call yourself a metal band, people want to know how good your solos are, you know?
And I brought this up earlier, but that is criteria number one for why I think we were given a bad product on purpose. I think Metallica post Load and Reload must have decided we can't do the Black Album again. So how do we get to that point? Okay, well, we can either try to put out something and people will call it mediocre, or brilliant. We can put out something bad, treat it like the greatest thing ever. People will still buy it, and then the next thing we put out will be mediocre, but it'll be so much better than the bad thing. People will like it again.
That sounds like a Lars idea right there.
Sounds like a George Lucas idea.
Because I hate to burst people's bubble about Some Kind of Monster, and I'm not saying James Hetfield didn't have real issues. I'm not saying they didn't have real issues. I'm saying they have been filming themselves from day one.
Yeah.
So they didn't just happen to be filming and then have this documentary happen. No, they were filming always and still are the Metallica Club.
Can we listen to something else?
I was about to ask, would you like to?
I mean, listen, there's other
There's
songs.
one more thing I do want to bring up about this album, though.
Can we hear Sweet Amber?
It's obvious when you listen to it, and Kirk talks about the fact that they took out his solos on purpose. Weren't you the one that said the album sounded better on the radio? Because then we got the radio mix of Some Kind of Monster, and it sounds better. So it was mixed badly on purpose.
Here's the thing about that record. Who's Metallica touring with at this point?
They were headlining, so they would have been a support band.
Well, I seen them when they on this
Korn.
tour.
They're playing with Korn.
On the
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. When they were here in St. Louis, they were here with Godsmack and a couple other no-name
Godsmack,
bands.
that's interesting because doesn't this sound kind of like something Godsmack would play?
Yeah.
It's kind of one of those, like, I feel like the musical approach, it's certainly not heavy metal because I could accept something that sounded like Justice for All that was just recorded badly. Everybody wants to pick apart how badly Saint Anger was recorded. I listen to underground black metal bands and death metal bands. I don't care about the recording quality, okay? If they had recorded something along the lines of Justice for All or even Kill 'Em All, but it just was recorded badly, that would have been fine. But what I hear is a record that is like, okay, what's aggressive mean now? Korn, Godsmack.
Oh, sure.
Limp Bizkit, that stuff's aggressive.
It's almost like they were trying to stay relevant.
That stuff doesn't have solo, even though Godsmack had solos. But
Ooh,
you
wow.
know,
The same
you
solo
know,
on every song.
Yeah, I was gonna say
it's fine. But
I love Godsmack.
I do too. I do too.
but I mean, I'm just saying, like, it just sounds like they were trying to make something that would appeal to kids now. You know, and they're like, well, we need to be aggressive because we're Metallica, and you know, we're supposed to be aggressive or whatever. And when I hear Saint Anger, I hear a badly made nu metal groove type record.
well, sure. Every song sounded like it was in drop C.
Yeah,
Like,
well, every song was in drop
yeah,
C.
I mean,
yeah.
like it was almost it was just like crappily put together.
You know, because I don't just take issue with the recording quality; I take issue with the actual material.
yeah. No, I agree. It does sound like every song was in drop C.
But nobody
It
ever
did-
talks about that.
It
All
does,
anybody
it
ever
did
talks
sound
about
like
is
something that was trying to keep up with what was popular at the time. I mean,
So then, like, okay, so Magnetic comes out, right? Like what, 1,000 years later? It seemed like,
I know,
like 4 years later, or something
Yeah,
like that.
4 or 5.
Yeah, and I'm listening to it, and I'm like, it sounds like Metallica. It's very Metallica-y. You know, it sounds like. Well, it doesn't really sound like it though. I mean, it sounds like. I don't even know what to compare it to, because don't fool yourself into thinking that albums like Hardwired and Death Magnetic are a throwback to the old sound, because they absolutely are not.
No,
I hear a band that's like, okay, we're gonna play fast.
shorter.
We're gonna throw some
heavier.
We're gonna throw some, throw a little bit of modern heaviness into there. But like we've been talking about since the beginning of this podcast, it sounds kind of flat. The big moments don't punch you like they
No.
should punch you.
It's almost like you're listening to this album going, is my treble turned up all the way? Because I don't hear really any of the thump or the heavy thickness to
and
it.
that's that Rick Rubin style of mixing. Mm-hmm. That
It's
many
just-
of his records are known for.
It's very flat. But again, it's kind of like, it's better than Saint Anger, but it's one of those things where, does that make it good? You know, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, was better than Star Wars The Phantom Menace.
But does that make it good?
But does that make any of the albums the Empire, like the metal equivalent of The Empire Strikes Back? Like, not even close. Like, it's not, it's not really a contest. So, but we're kind of in an age now where it seems like there's a lot of hand-holding, which is what I'm going to talk about in the Mortification podcast. There's a whole lot of like, well, I like it because I like Metallica, and I'm just not used to liking anything else. So, there are a lot of people who don't listen to heavy metal. Like, I've met a lot of metalheads in my life that say, oh, I'm a huge metalhead. I was like, oh, yeah, what bands do you like? Well, I like Metallica. Okay, well, there was a plural there. What bands do you like? The
I like
answer,
Motley Crue.
right? The answer can't be just Metallica. And I think this is a good example of that, in the sense that, like, well, the only metal band I listened to is Metallica, and I didn't like Saint Anger, but this album's a lot better because it sounds more like Metallica because it's recorded better. But I don't think that the material on Death Magnetic is really all that exceptional. And again, it's like, well, why would you expect that from the band? Because that's literally what I got for the entire beginning of the band's existence, was everything that I heard was better than the last thing I heard.
Kick ass. Just too overdrawn. I feel like Hardwire is more of a combination of all of their sounds from Black up until the present.
Yeah.
Like a summarizing of all of their albums between them. I don't think they're ever going to duplicate or come close to anything from the first, 3 albums. I just don't think it's even 4. I mean, they're not going to come to anything close to Justice ever again either.
No.
This is something
I don't want them
about
to try either.
This is something about classic bands that has always kind of existed. They end up in an area where they're not necessarily popular anymore, but they still have a fan base to serve.
Right.
This might blow some people's minds. Def Leppard still makes new records
Oh, yeah.
and has always made new records. Now,
I
how many
don't care.
How many people knew that? And if you listen to them, you'd be like, this is okay. But if you happen to go to a Def Leppard show, you want to hear them play Photograph. Metallica has this fan base that when they go to the show, They want to hear Sandman.
Play Creeping Death.
They want to play Creeping Death, but they still have to remind them they exist.
Yep.
So that's where we get Hardwired from.
Hardwired, way better than Death Magnetic.
And
Lyrically, musically, the way it's composed, everything, aggression, the feel behind it.
And every time I listen to it though, like I hear this is the I'm gonna call it the fourth iteration of James Hetfield's guitar tone. It's identical to Death Magnetic, so he's clearly locked in on something he likes.
Right.
And I've watched him talk a little bit about it, about how his new pickups, he likes the more passive sound, but he wants that mixed with that active pickup sound. And okay, it's the standard James Hetfield. I have 2 amps and they sound different, and it sounds massive when it's me. Cool, dude. You can pull that off. You're James Hetfield, but everything but the drums sounds the same. The vocals sound the same. The bass sounds the same. The guitars sound the same. The drums just are mixed better. And if one comparison I've seen a lot online is Death Magnetic versus Death Magnetic on Guitar Hero,
Yeah, that's funny.
which is hilarious when you actually think about how much time somebody
That's
put into
awesome.
taking the tracks out of Guitar Hero and remixing Death Magnetic and said, "Here's how it sounds." There's also frequently, commented on "And Justice for James," where you get the Guitar Hero bass lines that are edited back into Justice.
James, if you're listening,
Nice.
please.
Well, that's all we want, man. You don't even have to do any work.
If I
I
sat,
know, right?
if I
Just
sat
sign
down
a
with Jason
paper.
Newsted today and he said, "All right, what do you want to learn?" I'd be like, "Can you just play Justice for me so I can see exactly what you're doing?" Because I can't hear it. But Hardwired is a good Metallica album. As a fan of Metallica, I am glad Hardwired exists. I have been listening to it almost constantly since it came out, which is what I like to do with albums and bands that I like.
It's still not.
I don't want to put it away a week from now. I want to keep listening to it.
Amen to that.
It still doesn't have the build-up progression that I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, but I don't know that you're going to get that from them ever again, though. I don't know. I mean,
Well, that makes me sad. Like, why not?
I hate to bring it down, but I just don't think that they're at that stage in their career anymore. I don't think you're going to get these epic sounding, this puppets build you up.
Sure.
I think this
No,
is
and I
this is
agree
what
with
this
you.
is. This is where they are. Like, this is where they're at. This is definitely a much improved album over the last few. I didn't hate Death Magnetic. Like I just feel like it could definitely have sounded a lot better. I do see some of the riffs in this album do sound very Death Magnetic, but to me they sound heavier. Maybe playing in a step down or something, or half a step down. They sound a little bit ballsier, a little beefier. Like I said, it's got that more Metallica beef sound than the last couple albums definitely have had.
Well, I just think the material is better on Hardwired than on Death Magnetic. Death Magnetic could have been good, production quality aside. Like, I don't get caught up that much on production quality. It's really, to me, just the strength of the material alone. And on Magnetic, James' vocal hooks just weren't there.
They were weird. Like, did you ever notice in some of those songs, like, it's almost like he fit too many lyrics into like
Into one line?
Yeah,
Yeah. And
Like, you don't have to do 17 words in one line, James. Like, you could shorten that out. There were definitely songs. It would drive me nuts trying to sing. Like you have a song of his, and it's like, what are you doing? Like,
well, it's
do
like
some rhythm. You're like trying to punch 7, especially in the opening track. Like,
Yeah.
It's,
It's like he went into the studio with the lyrics and decided
pre-made.
to add them to the songs
Yeah.
while recording them.
It was just a weird vibe for that.
It just doesn't seem like a lot of work was put into the vocal output.
No, maybe not. Maybe not. Who knows?
I mean, I'm sure it wasn't on Kill 'Em All either, but
The instrumental was good.
it worked out really good on Kill 'Em All. Did not so much on Death Magnetic.
Hey, man,
No.
the vocals on Anesthesia were awesome.
Some of the
Bass
best.
solo, take 1.
But the biggest
It
issue
says everything you need to know.
I want to be that guy there.
the biggest issue I have with metal in general nowadays is that we're criticizing. Okay, we are being critical, and there's a lot of criticism. There's a lot of negativity online. But I would say, as an overall band, if Metallica quit now, can we really fault them for a few bad albums out of tons of really good ones?
Nope.
You really can't. I mean, overall, the band is still rocking a pretty heavy A-.
And yet they still will sell out soccer arenas and venues everywhere they go.
Yeah, but I mean, Nickelback sells out soccer arenas, and
they do not. Shut up.
Yes, they do.
Don't tell lies about Nickelback.
I'm not telling
Nickel
lies.
hack.
I got nothing but good things to say about Nickelback.
I bet you do.
No, seriously. For a band that gets how to make hit singles, actually sell.
Right.
It has nothing to do, in Nickelback's case, it has nothing to do with quality. It's just what people want to hear.
Oh, God, no. He knows how to write a catchy hook, and bam, you sell it, exploit it.
So, I mean, I got nothing but respect for that as a poor person, you know.
So, overall, Metallica, Dan, what do you say?
It's good. And I'm pleased with the direction that the band is headed in still. If they quit tomorrow, I would still be a satisfied customer.
Josh?
Oh, still the greatest band of all time. There's no doubt there.
And
I'm curious to think, though, is this it? Is this the last album for them? Is this how they ride in the sunset, or do you think we get another one, another two?
I'm not really sure. They're solid. Their lineup's pretty solid now.
Let me ask you this. Do you think they should stop with this, or do you think there's enough left for another one? Do you think they try and go better? Or do you think this is where they should top out at?
I think Metallica is past the point of being innovative.
Oh, I don't
if that
disagree
answers
there.
your question. In the sense that, do I think that they're ever going to top this record?
Should they top this?
Yeah, I think they can. I think this incarnation of Metallica could easily top Hardwired and Death Magnetic. I think that this version of the band could definitely get better. What we're going to end up with probably is going to be something very different than what we're used to.
Probably.
But I think they could top it for sure.
We need S&M too. That's what we need.
There you go.
Give me another concert with that.
Right.
Any of that.
Hardwired to S&M.
That's right.
There you go.
Could you just imagine? Trying to do some kind of monster with a symphony.
Yeah. But,
frantic.
I think general consensus is that, we never got Joe's opinion.
Oh, Metallica as a whole?
Yeah.
Most influential players I've ever listened to. Still the backbone of my personal guitar style, and a band that I will never get tired of listening to.
I agree 100% there.
But-
10 years, 15 years from now, I'll still be listening to Killing 'Em All, Black, Justice,
Yeah. And
Saint Anger every once in a while.
And I think, well, I'll put it this way. Actually, I'll put it this way with a question. Dan, to wrap it up, what's your album of the week? What does everybody need to go out and listen to right now?
Right now. I've been listening to just old stuff.
Well, anything, like any album. Doesn't matter what band.
Right now, my favorite album that I've been listening to is probably an album called Left Hand Path by the band Entombed. It's death metal from Sweden, but it's not Swedish death metal. It sounds like old school death metal, like Florida death metal.
Everybody needs to
Florida.
go listen to that. And if you're not listening to that, you need to be listening to Polar Similar by Norma Jean.
There you go. Well, pretty soon we're going to have another discussion. It's going to be on the band Mortification, who is a Christian metal band. And we'll have that up for you soon, I guess, after this one, if anybody cares.
So,
That's okay, Dan. I don't have an album to throw out there.
oh, you got one?
Oh, hell yeah. If anybody's ever heard of or
He
goes to
asked
see.
me.
I got you, Dan. He likes you, okay? And no, in all seriousness, I've been into this band Ghost for a few years now, and they've got an album that's been out a little while called Meloria that's it's a good band. And yeah, they're from, I want to say Sweden to Finland, somewhere in that area. They just know how to produce metal bands.
Something
that's
in
for
the
damn
water
sure.
over there, yeah.
Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, maybe it's the lack of sunlight. I don't know.
The sun never shines in Sweden.
That's
yeah.
right. So yeah, if you ever get a chance to check out Meloria from Ghost, definitely a great album.
We'll
Great
do
band.
so.
And on that note, this has been episode 1 of Discography Discussions. We'll see you guys next week.